What would you think if I told you that the most unshakable woman you've ever met once shattered completely? That behind her quiet strength was once a storm of chaos, wounds carved by hands she trusted, a soul frayed from years of bending too far for people who never stayed. But now, she moves through fire and does not burn. Her power is not noise, it's presence. She does not flinch when others rage, does not chase when they withdraw, does not collapse when things fall apart. Her calm isn't passive, it's forged, like blacksmith steel under ancient hammer. The woman who is untouchable under pressure is not lucky. She is practiced, trained, and every habit that makes her indomitable has roots older than empire, anchored in Stoic philosophy, yet pulsing through the psychology of the modern self. You've seen her. Maybe you've tried to become her. But until you master the art of inner stillness, true stillness, not avoidance, not numbing, but the kind earned through the fires of self-inquiry, you will remain a slave to every look, every word, every loss, every raised voice in the room. The Stoics knew this well. The mind is either governed or it governs you. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of the known world, wrote not to others, but to himself. Reminders to endure, to stay centered while the sky split with war. His strength wasn't in dominion, it was in his refusal to be conquered by his own emotions. Imagine being able to do that, not numbly, but consciously, to hold grief without drowning, to feel anger but not lash, to hear betrayal and still stand, back straight, voice steady, choosing not from fear, but from alignment. This is the power of the untouchable, and it does not come cheaply. She begins by seeing her emotions as they are, not villains to be slain, not weaknesses to be denied, but signals. The Stoics called this apatheia, not apathy, but freedom from the tyranny of passion. It is not the absence of feeling, it is the refusal to be ruled by it. Modern psychology would call this emotional regulation, the ability to remain anchored while the storm moves through you. But the Stoics? They went deeper. They saw every external trigger as a mirror, reflecting not truth, but your perception of it. So she watches herself, not obsessively, with precision. She becomes a surgeon of the psyche. When she's triggered, she doesn't just react, she inquires. What part of me feels threatened by this silence? What fear am I projecting onto his coldness? Why does this rejection echo like abandonment? She doesn't avoid pain, she interrogates it. This is the first sacred habit. She separates what is within her control from what is not. He leaves. She lets him. They misunderstand. She allows it. The world disappoints. She absorbs it without letting it define her. This woman no longer lives at the mercy of circumstance. Because she has understood the great Stoic paradox. True power is not the ability to control others. It is the ability to control your response, even when everything around you is out of control. This requires discipline, not discipline of the body, though that may follow, but discipline of the lens through which she sees reality. She has trained herself not to crave comfort, but to seek clarity. She is not cold, she is precise. And when pressure arrives, when the texts go unanswered, when the job crumbles, when the world starts spinning sideways, she returns to her center like a warrior to her breath. Because she has practiced, she has rehearsed loss in her mind, like the Stoics once did. Premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils, not to become cynical, but to become prepared. Can you do the same? Can you imagine the very thing you fear most and breathe through it calmly, not because it doesn't matter, but because you trust your ability to withstand it? most cannot. They distract, they deny, they run. But the untouchable woman does not flinch. She envisions the fall, and still she climbs. She anticipates betrayal, and still she opens. She knows what she may lose, and still she loves, because she has decided, nothing taken from me can take me from myself. In the deepest part of her psyche, she has severed the cord between her value and the approval of others. Her worth is no longer held hostage by how she is received. It is no longer dictated by how much she is wanted, praised, chosen, needed. She has chosen herself, and in doing so, she becomes a paradox. Fiercely compassionate, but fiercely contained. Emotionally alive, but emotionally unshakable. The world may test her, but it cannot own her. She walks through a world where most are constantly seeking validation, reassurance, permission. But she has stopped begging to be seen. She does not perform. She does not prove. She embodies. And that, more than anything, unsettles those around her. Because most people are comforted by your need. They feel powerful when your emotions are loud, when your disappointment is visible, when your anxiety or longing spills into their hands like a gift they never earned. But when you no longer give that power away, when your silence is rooted not in suppression, but sovereignty, they are left with the mirror of their own chaos. The second Stoic habit that shapes this woman is her mastery of negative visualization. She does not just prepare for hardship, she befriends it. She does not pretend that people will stay, that promises will be kept, that fairness is a guarantee. She does not cling to fantasies that the world owes her gentleness. She imagines, daily, the unraveling of things she loves, not to invite suffering, but to build inner readiness. You see, the mind fears most what it refuses to confront, but what you willingly face loses its power over you. She sits with the image of absence, not because she wants to lose, but because she no longer fears loss, like a child fears the dark. She has walked through abandonment, and she has returned. She has survived betrayal, and she has alchemized it. She has watched people leave who said they never would, and she no longer sees it as failure, only movement. You begin to understand that untouchability is not a mask of strength. It is the residue of profound inner confrontation. She no longer tells herself soothing lies. She no longer insists that others must understand her in order for her to be whole. She has given up the dream that one day the world will love her exactly how she needs. That was the child's dream. She buried it with reverence and became her own sanctuary. There is a kind of softness that comes only after the ego dies. She has held her own wounds in her hands and looked at them without flinching. That's what separates her. Not perfection, but courage. And courage is not loud. Courage is not pride. Courage is the quiet force that says, even if this all falls apart, I remain. This is the soul of Stoicism, endurance without bitterness. It is easy to harden, easy to detach as a defense, easy to grow cold and call it wisdom. But the untouchable woman, she has not frozen her heart. She has expanded it. She still feels deeply, but she does not drown in feeling. Because the third habit she practices is distancing emotion from identity. She knows that a feeling is not a fact, that fear is not truth, that sadness is not destiny, that anxiety is not prophecy. So she lets emotion move through her like weather across a vast ocean. She does not resist it, but she does not become it. She can say, I feel abandoned, without believing she is abandonable. She can say, I feel unworthy, without deciding she is unworthy. She has learned to sit with emotion as witness, not slave. And in that space, between stimulus and response, she finds her strength. That breath, that pause, that fraction of a second where she asks, is this reaction aligned with who I want to become? Most don't pause. Most react. Most speak from the wound, move from the fear, answer from the craving. They don't stop to ask, is this truly me? Or is this my unmet need screaming through me? But she does. She has trained herself to wait, to watch, to question, to observe her own nervous system, like a hawk circling its prey. And only when her clarity returns does she speak, decide, act. That kind of patience feels unnatural in a world of speed. But Stoicism was never about ease. It was about mastery. Mastery over the self. Mastery over the unruly instincts that would have you scream when silence would serve, run when staying would heal, cling when letting go would set you free. She knows all this because she has failed all this, repeatedly. But each failure became a stone under her feet. Each time she lost herself in someone else's storm, she learned to build better shelter, not walls, but thresholds. She does not let just anyone in now. She is generous, but selective. Because she has learned that peace is more valuable than attention, and that not everyone deserves access to the world she built inside. When pressure comes, and it always comes, she returns not to fear, but to practice. The same rituals, the same breath, the same inquiry. She does not ask, why is this happening to me? She asks, how can I meet this with dignity? That's the quiet discipline that makes her untouchable. She is not free from emotion. She is not numb. She is awake. But she refuses to let her awakening be used against her. And that's what shakes the earth beneath her feet. Because she walks not to impress, not to chase, not to be saved, but to become. There is a moment in every transformation when the old self claws at the edges of the new, when the girl who begged to be chosen howls inside the woman who no longer waits. This is the crucible. This is the quiet war no one sees, and it is here, beneath the polished surface, in the raw interior, that untouchability is carved. Her fourth habit is solitude. Not loneliness, not isolation, but chosen solitude. She seeks stillness not because the world is too much, but because her soul demands it. In silence, she listens, not to the noise of others' opinions, but to the echo of her own voice. Not the voice of fear or doubt or childhood ache, but the deeper voice, the one that only emerges when you have gone still enough, long enough, to hear the truth beneath the chaos. Most people are terrified of that kind of silence. In it, the projections crumble, the masks fall, the numbing fails. But she knows, what you do not face in solitude will haunt you in relationship. What you do not resolve within, you will seek in others, over and over, until the pattern suffocates you. So she chooses solitude as sacred training, a monastery of one, a wilderness of self, and in that space, she meets her shadow. Jung knew this intimately. The part of us we disown, the shame we bury, the hunger we silence. She does not run from it. She greets it like a long-lost twin. She knows that to be whole, she must integrate, not amputate, her darker parts. Yes, she has envied. Yes, she has manipulated. Yes, she has wanted to be adored, worshipped, obeyed. She has fantasized about being so needed that no one could leave. But now, she sees these impulses without shame. She cradles them without indulgence. She does not act from them, but she honors their roots. They are not her enemy. They are unparented parts of her. She becomes mother to her own shadow, and in doing so, she becomes free. Free not from darkness, but free to move through darkness with her eyes open. That is what makes her calm so profound. She is not calm because life is easy. She is calm because she has faced her own chaos and no longer fears its arrival. When others rage, she sees the wounded child inside them. When they abandon, she sees their flight from their own mirror. She does not make it about herself. That is the fifth and perhaps rarest Stoic habit, the decentering of ego. She does not see herself as the sun in every storm. She does not believe every silence is rejection, every coldness a punishment, every delay a reflection of her inadequacy. That was the old self, fragile, hungry, forever decoding meaning through the lens of shame. But now she understands. Most people are not reacting to you. They are reacting to their own unresolved grief, unmet needs, and unconscious fears. And when you internalize that, you become their prisoner. But when you release it, you walk free. The Stoics taught this not with sentiment, but with structure. It is not things that disturb us, said Epictetus, but our judgment about those things. So she retrains her judgment, not to become indifferent, but to become discerning. Not everything deserves a reaction. Not everyone deserves a seat at your table. Not every emotion deserves to be fed. She speaks now less than before, but her words carry weight. She acts with less haste, but her movement is decisive. She gives more slowly, but with greater depth. And in this refinement, she reclaims what so many women have lost, the power to choose, not just to please. Because she has seen what happens when you abandon yourself to be accepted. She has worn that mask. She has twisted herself into versions that were palatable, pretty, pleasing, and it cost her everything. Her voice, her clarity, her center. She no longer pays that price. Now, she watches, she waits, she listens, not to others, but to the wisdom of her own body, her own knowing, her own quiet fire. And from this place, pressure becomes irrelevant, because nothing outside her holds the keys to her peace. You could ignore her, praise her, betray her, worship her, and it would not shake her core, because she has stopped giving others the blueprint to build or destroy her. She has become the architect, and her life is a temple of choice. When the world demands urgency, she slows down. When others panic, she exhales. When everything spins, she remains rooted. Not because she doesn't feel it all, but because she has become the container that can hold it all. The untouchable woman is not an illusion. She is not an unreachable archetype. She is every woman who has chosen to stop abandoning herself. And when you begin to do the same, everything changes. There comes a time when a woman no longer seeks to be understood by others, because she finally understands herself. This is not arrogance, it is emancipation. The cage was never built by the world. The cage was forged from the belief that her worth depended on the world's recognition. Once she dissolves that belief, the lock breaks open, and she steps out, not louder, but clearer, not harder, but deeper. There is something almost unnerving about her now. Not because she is cruel, but because she no longer plays the role others expect. She does not justify her silence. She does not apologize for her presence. She does not negotiate with her intuition. She has stopped bleeding to keep others warm. She is no longer performing for approval. She is living in alignment. And alignment, when practiced consistently, becomes your shield. Not to guard you from intimacy, but to protect your integrity. That is the subtle, yet final shift. The moment she chooses integrity over attachment. She doesn't need to be liked. She doesn't even need to be understood. She needs only one thing: that her choices reflect her truth. This is where untouchability matures. It's no longer about not being hurt. It's about no longer betraying yourself to avoid being hurt. She trusts herself now, and that trust becomes armor. Not heavy, not rigid, but sacred. She listens to the quiet yes in her chest, the quiet no in her bones, and she honors it, even when it costs her something. Especially when it costs her something, because she has learned what you abandon yourself to keep will always abandon you. So she does not chase, she does not plead, she does not contort. Instead, she remembers who she is, not as performance, but as a return. She remembers the strength in her lineage, the wisdom in her silence, the fire beneath her stillness. She remembers the little girl inside her who once waited to be chosen, and she walks back to her, kneels beside her, and says, "You don't have to wait anymore. We choose now." That's the rebirth, not a reinvention, but a reunion. And from that reunion comes something elemental, not the woman society scripted, but the woman born of soul, forged through pressure, honed by loss, expanded by pain, steadied by practice. The Stoics spoke of fate not as resignation, but as collaboration. Amor fati, love of fate. To embrace what is, not with passivity, but with partnership. This is the final threshold, when she stops resisting what happens and starts responding with grace. Because pressure no longer frightens her. Conflict no longer defines her. Failure no longer shames her. She has failed and survived. She has been misunderstood and still speaks truth. She has been abandoned and still loves. This is the untouchable woman, not because she doesn't feel, but because she has learned to feel without folding, to care without collapsing, to give without expecting salvation in return. And so she becomes the rarest presence in the room, a woman who does not need anything from it. That kind of presence changes everything. Men notice. They sense the difference. She is not coy. She is clear. She is not flirtatious. She is focused. She does not demand attention. Attention follows her like breath in winter air. Other women notice too. Some will try to emulate her confidence, not knowing it was born from collapse. Others will be threatened by it, because she mirrors what they've abandoned in themselves. But a few, a sacred few, will recognize her and walk beside her, and together they will burn down the old archetypes of desperation, dependency, and disguise. She will not raise her voice. She will raise her standard. She will not trade truth for intimacy. She will build intimacy from truth. She will not fear the end of things. She will bless them. Because she knows every ending is an invitation to return to the one relationship that never leaves, the one between her and her essence. And when you master that, you are no longer touchable in the way the world once moved you. You are not callous. You are not armored. You are simply whole. That wholeness can never be stolen, only remembered. So when life pressures her now, she no longer asks, "Will I survive this?" She asks, "Who will I become through this?" And that, above all, is what makes her untouchable. In the final descent, where most unravel, she ascends inward. There is no audience, no applause, no external witness to her becoming. Only the echo of her own breath meeting the silence she once feared. This is where pressure transforms from enemy to oracle. This is where the untouchable woman is fully born, not through resistance, but through remembrance. She has stopped looking for herself in the eyes of others. She no longer asks the world for her reflection, because now she sees it in the still water of her own solitude. What once were questions, am I enough? Do they love me? Am I safe here? Have withered, no longer fed by fear. In their place blooms a single answer, I am. The storms still come, the world still turns, people still disappoint. But she no longer braces, she receives, she allows. She lets life speak to her, not as a test, but as a teacher. This is the wisdom of the Stoics reborn through the body, not just the mind, not intellectual detachment, but embodied presence. Where others panic, she becomes more precise, not because she has all the answers, but because she trusts her response. There is no frantic grasping, no rush to control. Her nervous system has become a sanctuary, not a battleground. She no longer reacts from the wound, she chooses from the center. This is the ultimate freedom, not to be untouched by life, but to be unmoved by its attempts to seduce her back into unconsciousness. The world will offer her roles, the pleaser, the martyr, the girl who waits. She declines them all. She wears only what is true. Her integrity is her uniform now. And from this stillness, she creates, not to be seen, not to be needed, but because the soul, once unburdened, longs to give, not as sacrifice, but as overflow. She pours herself into her work, her words, her art, not to prove, but to express. She gives from fullness, not lack, and so her giving regenerates rather than depletes. She no longer runs on borrowed energy. She is rooted in the self-sustaining fire of self-knowledge. There are still aches, still echoes of old pain, but she knows now. They are not regressions. They are reminders. She no longer fears their return. She welcomes them as old visitors, knowing they come not to punish, but to purify. Each wave of emotion now refines her, not erodes her. And in this refinement, something sacred arises: discernment. She no longer offers explanations to those committed to misunderstanding her. She no longer performs wholeness to make others comfortable. She no longer sacrifices peace to keep the peace. Her boundaries are no longer threats. They are invitations to meet her in truth or to walk away. She is unattached to either. Because she no longer believes that love must come dressed in struggle to be real. That was the lie of a younger self. She has burned that mythology down. What remains is clarity, and from clarity comes choice. She chooses with intention now. Her yes is whole. Her no is holy. She does not play games with her energy. She does not dilute herself to be digestible. She does not seek revenge or apology or vindication. Her revenge is her radiance. Her apology is her silence. Her vindication is her light. She will lose people. She will lose comfort. She may even lose old dreams. But what she gains is incorruptible: herself. And when you belong to yourself, you are never homeless again. She becomes a mirror now, not for others to copy, but to confront. Some will love her for it. Others will resent her. But she does not shapeshift anymore. She has no interest in being anyone's fantasy. She is far too real for that. And this is the quiet revolution. This is the inheritance of every woman who dares to meet herself in the dark. She becomes untouchable, not because she is guarded, but because she is guided. Not because she resists the world, but because she is rooted beyond it. She lives now by a different compass, not outcome, alignment. And so, whether loved or left, praised or ignored, chosen or forgotten, she remains. She walks like a mountain. She speaks like a temple bell. She loves like a wildfire, Only those who are ready will remain close. Because she does not chase, she chooses.